Recording in the next idea validation program. Oh, very exciting, very exciting.
Hi, Hani.
Hi, Arthur. How are you?
Good. How are you? How's everyone?
Good, good.
Hello,
Hi,
everyone.
Hi
Hi,
everyone.
hi, hi, hi.
Hi, everyone.
Echo.
What a
Hi,
lovely.
Jana. Hi, Dr.
Hello.
Asfour.
Hi, everyone.
Right now, I'm in Cyprus with the go-to-market startup. So maybe in 1 year, you'll be at go-to-market in Cyprus as well.
How's the food there, Hani? How's the
Very good,
weather?
man. Everything is good. It's a really nice place, honestly. عم نصير افطار كل يوم كمان بعد الشغل, so it's been fun.
Yeah, we see the pictures on the group.
Yeah, yeah. Like, shall we wait a couple of minutes and then we start?
Yeah, I think we can wait 2 minutes. By the way,
Yeah,
guys, if we'd all turn on your cameras, it would be great. We would love to see
please.
you all so that we
Yes,
can
please.
start realizing with your faces.
Yeah, yeah. Please, everybody, open your cameras, please.
I'm driving and I have a doctor appointment in half an hour, so I'll try to be here as much as I can.
Well, we would love
Sorry
to
for
see
that.
you. We would love to see both you and the doctor then.
Well,
سلامتك يا مها.
thank you, thank you,
No, no, please drive safe. Turn off the camera.
thank you.
You got a free pass. Also because your name is Maha, and typically we like Mahas in the team. So
Yeah, I know that.
Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. I guess we can start now. People are keep coming in. Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us again. Hani Haidar, Program Manager at iPark. Very excited to kick off the IVP once again. Very happy with the last cohort, and right now you're the next in line for all the great things that have been happening to the other startups by being part of the program. So today's agenda, we're going to have a word from our directors, and then Arthur will present his startup journey presentation, what it means to be a founder and what it takes to be a successful one. And maybe at the end, I have like a couple of things I want to mention. So briefly, I'll get right to it. So if you want, either Dr. Asfour or Maha, you can start with an intro word.
After Dr. Asfour.
Yeah. Well, all the formalities. First of all, I just want to say I'm so excited to see this new cohort join us. I can see on Zoom it's like 3 pages long, so that's amazing. I'm very excited. Hopefully, you're as excited as we are in embarking on this journey. I'm sure some of you have some ideas. Others of you will come up with new ideas. And like I tell everybody, hopefully you'll enjoy the journey, learn on the journey, and end up maybe with a startup, and even better than that, maybe a unicorn. So looking forward to a very exciting journey and lots of fun. So good luck and keep us posted.
Okay, so Hani, can I welcome everyone? So I would like to welcome everyone. I am Maha. I manage the day-to-day life in AUB Innovation Park. Dr. Asfour is our Chief Innovation and Transformation Officer. So the Innovation Park runs under the Office of Innovation and Transformation, which is also the bigger umbrella that manages IT and AUB Online. This is the Hani, our programs manager, and Arthur, our entrepreneur in residence. We have also other team members that are hidden here in the list of attendees. Here is Rida. I can see Rida. Too many names. I cannot see everyone. So Rida is our community growth manager. Maria supports our programs. Mary, she coordinates our operations. So these are the people that you will see often, and they will be there to help you. It's a very exciting journey because you will come out of it with one of two things. Either you will be simply upskilled to face any venture you want to go into in your career, any negotiation, even outside your career, or you will have this plus a company or an organization that you will be running. If you are alone, we will help you to form your team. If you already have a team, we will make sure that your efforts will be optimized and reach success. There are stages. I think Hani will talk about them. So if you decide to move forward with your idea, here's Noor, our operations manager as well. So if you decide to move forward with your idea, you will move from the idea stage to the build stage, where you build your product, and then go to market stage, where you start execution. And after that, there's what we call the growth program. And it is for me, it's the fun phase. It's where we start traveling around with you guys to discover markets and scale up. So this is it in a brief. We provide several perks and services, all up to your commitment and as much as you need help. So it's mutual effort. And as long as you are in, we are in it together. And welcome on board.
Thank you, Maha, for the inspiration. So before we move to Arthur, just quickly, we've been sending you Slack links to join our community for the IDEA program on Slack. So if you haven't received it in your inbox, please check your junk mail. Now, also, over the next few days, we'll be enrolling you to the IDEA Validation Program course module, and we'll be giving you information about that, what you're supposed to do when you enroll into this program. So it's going to be a program online with some deliverables. At the same time, we'll have webinars weekly on different topics. So this is more or less what it's going to look like. The dates for the deliverables are going to be online posted, and everything you need to know about how to go from phase 1 to phase 2 is very well explained on the platform. So once again, check your junk mail, please, for the Slack link, and then I'll leave the floor to Arthur to give his presentation.
Thank you, Hani. Let me share screen. All right. Can you guys see my screen? Cool.
Yes.
I like to use a lot of fun visuals. So you guys are going to see some funky things in this presentation. But before we get started, my name is Arthur Bizdikian. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Lemonade Fashion and the entrepreneur and resident of AUB's Innovation Park. I think we've been working together hand in hand now over the past 3 years now, I would say, to create amazing success stories, not just in Lebanon, but across the world. A lot of our companies have been able to start locally, but scale into global companies. And I think it's really because of how the program is shaped, because it really focuses on building amazing entrepreneurs, and it starts in the IVP. So today we're not going to talk that much about strategy. I really want us to start focusing a bit more on what is the mindset required in entrepreneurship. So I started my journey a couple of years ago, and one thing that I soon discovered, and by the way, a lot of what I say is cliches, but just bear with me. But one thing that I really discovered is what sets a proper entrepreneur apart from non-entrepreneurs is the ability to execute. And the thing is that everything that you've learned in university, and in the school system, I want you to forget. And it's very funny that I say that while I have Dr. Asfour and Maha on this call, since they represent AUB, and so do I. But the reason why I say that is because in the schooling system, we're really used to a system that says that we need to get 7 out of 10 right to get a passing grade, right? And for us to really excel, we have to get 9 over 10, right? Because that's an A or so on. But in entrepreneurship, the hard part is that it actually works the other way around. Because if you get 7 out of 10 right in entrepreneurship, you will be a multi-trillionaire, which is something that doesn't really exist because no one is right 7 out of 10 times. In our field, you actually succeed by making mistakes and by failing. If you can get 1 out of 10 right, you're in an elite club of entrepreneurs, to be very honest. So, and that is hard. That is really hard to accept, especially in the early days, because it means that we're really jumping in a field of uncertainty. And that is the whole point of entrepreneurship, because if we really want to define what it is, at the end of the day, the concept of entrepreneurship is how do we create more with less, right? So the formula for that is, and again, simple slides. The formula for that is, how do we add more value for a smaller unit of energy? And that's the whole concept of disruption. The reason why people keep on saying an industry is going to get disrupted or we're disrupting an industry is because you're creating a platform, a technology, a system, whatever it is, where you can achieve the same results or even better results that an industry is seeing by putting in a lot less in return, whether that's a lot less human resources, a lot less capital resources, or even a lot less time, because time is a very important resource as well in the world of entrepreneurship. But what does that mean? That means you're going and you're telling the world, I'm going to do this in a way that no one has done before. If that's what you're proclaiming to the world, you're actually telling them that, hey, I'm going to create what people thought was impossible, but I'm going to make it possible. And how do you know if you're on the right track? If you're actually making mistakes. Because the moment you stop making mistakes, it means you stopped innovating. So now you're building what the world has already seen. And the rule of thumb is when you want to start a business, if you want to be a tech startup entrepreneur, when you share this with the first 5 people around you, the closest to you, if 4 out of 5 don't laugh at you, then you're probably not aiming big enough, right? So that's usually the first step. Now, this is going to be a journey of personal growth because we need to start building up that inner resilience. And the thing is that a lot of what we're going to discuss, again, people have done before, right? Like there are amazing entrepreneurs, and if we research them and if we start dissecting who they are, and there's a lot of amazing books and podcasts and all these things right now, you will notice that actually success leaves a lot of clues. And today entrepreneurs really become role models, and you really need to base what you're building on optimism. So if you guys are the future role models of the world, how would you like the world to see you? Are you going to be a good ambassador for success, or are you going to be an evil ambassador? And I think you guys have seen both, right? There are a lot of entrepreneurs that become successful and are changing the world for a better place. But you also have a lot of people that are successful. And I'm not, going to call out one of the current world leaders that use their platform sometimes for disruption in a bad way and for harm. And the thing is that today as entrepreneurs, we hold a lot of weight. And it's really important for us from the beginning to understand what is our motivation and why are we doing what we're doing. But I can promise you one thing. This is going to be a very painful journey. And there are 2 types of pain, so there's the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Either ways, something's going to hurt. But historically, discipline weighs way less than regrets. The pain of regret is always going to be bigger, which means there's actually a funny quote that I heard a while back, and it's one of the things that made me push what I'm doing without stopping. That quote was that the richest place in the world and the wealthiest place in the entire world is actually the cemetery, because that is where people and their ideas go to die. Because most of us, we have a lot of ideas, but we don't execute on them, and we take them with us to the grave. Most of us had probably the idea of an Uber. Most of us had the idea of an Airbnb. And that's why when we see these platforms come out, a lot of times we're like, oh, I had this idea. I could have been that person. But the thing is, ideas in entrepreneurship mean nothing. It's always, always about the execution. So when we started Lemonade in the first year, we had one plan, and we weren't lucky enough to have iPark at that phase. But we only had one rule. The rule was every time we doubt ourselves, like every time this thought comes to your head that says, who am I to build this company? And that's something that happens a lot, especially in the early days. You will doubt yourself quite a lot. Every time we had that idea, every time that doubt came to us, the rule was we would pick up the phone and call someone and book a meeting. This way, we were forced to always move forward. With that one rule, within the first 2 months, we had already launched an MVP of the platform. So we had already launched a prototype of the website. We had already onboarded our first 5 brands, and we had already won our first competition. So in a month and a half, we were able to do more than what most companies would do in the first 6 months. Just because we were not stuck on over planning, we were always more stuck on, okay, how do we build, test, and then move forward and then learn from that? So at this point, you might be asking yourself, what is a startup? Because we talk about startup a lot in entrepreneurship, especially with iPark, because you have different types of businesses and entrepreneurs. So we're not really looking at, let's say, traditional small to medium enterprises. Like we're not looking at, for example, opening up a restaurant. We're looking more for technologies and systems that can scale and have a very big impact. So we start always with the concept, how do we build local in the beginning? How do we test it in our backyard? But how can we build the next Anghami, right? How can we build the next TikTok? How do we build the next Slack and so on? So those are all platforms that become global. Hani, you have a question?
Yeah, I think this is something people wonder about. How do you define and differentiate between a tech-enabled SME and a tech startup?
Very simple. If what I'm building, let's say let's say I have a restaurant and my restaurant uses toters to deliver food, then I am a tech-enabled business, right? Because I'm a restaurant, I'm able to get to my clients by using a technology that already exists, that everyone else in the world has access to. When I'm a startup, I'm actually the technology itself. So I am the one building the system that potentially other people can use, right? So that is the main difference. Always keep in mind, am I the restaurant or am I toters? Now, McDonald's has their own app. Okay, they have toters, but there's also a McDonald's app. Does that mean McDonald's is a startup? No, it's still tech-enabled because the app of McDonald's is the same type of technology and application that every other restaurant in the world has access to. Whereas when you're building something like Toters, you're giving access to the rest of the world. You're giving access to other businesses to be able to reach. Now, Toters is like a marketplace, but you might be building, I don't know, something like Slack, right? There's a difference between me creating a WhatsApp group and telling people, hey, let's join a WhatsApp group so that we can communicate between each other. So here I'm more being tech-enabled. But if I come up with a new platform that allows communication, then I'm the startup itself. And there are different types of startups, right? The most common ones are these 3. The first type of startup is where you're actually combining 2 industries. And this is the example of Airbnb. So what Airbnb did, they went in and they're like, so Airbnb actually started off mostly as a Craigslist thing. So what they did is they took the concept of Craigslist. So back then, people would go on Craigslist and they would say, I have a couch to rent, right? Or I have an extra room to be able to rent. So it was a very simple listing type of experience. And at the same time, you had a platform called booking.com where people could go online and book all these different types of hotels on one platform. So what Airbnb did is they took the UX, UI, and the concept of booking.com, but they added an industry which was being catered through Craigslist in a very random way. And then they combined these two and then they built Airbnb. So that is how you combine two industries together. The second type of startups, we call them the 2.0s. Okay. 2.0s, or one of the most amazing books about this is the book that Peter Thiel has, which is 0 to 1. So here it's how do you build something that is so much better than what already exists in the market? And this is what Facebook was able to do with MySpace. This is what Google was able to do with Yahoo. But when you do that, it really has to be way better than what the competition was really doing so that you have a big difference in the technology. And finally, which is actually one of the easiest ones, are the Me Too companies. So usually Me Too companies are companies like Kareem, right? Companies like Spotify, companies like Anghami. So what these companies did is they saw that in the US, there were some amazing trends. There were some amazing businesses happening, but those businesses were not targeting the region or were not customized for the local market and the local needs. And they believed that if they created a local culture and localized it, then they can become market leaders because each culture operates in a slightly different way. That's how Kareem was created. Kareem actually was sold for around $4 billion. And, Anghami is a huge group. We're all proud of Anghami. They launched on the stock market for $500 million, and they recently also got acquired by OSN, right? So now they're part of that OSN group. But how do you build that, mega company? Again, it's one of those ways. Now, don't be afraid of targeting big problems, okay? The bigger the problem that you're trying to solve as a startup, the bigger your solution is. And typically in a startup, what we have two types of companies. And you're always going to hear us asking you, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Because a typical company comes in and be like, there's a problem, this is my solution. But you have two types of problems, okay? You either have what we call painkiller. So your company is either a painkiller or your company is a supplement. A painkiller means that you are targeting a problem that hurts. It's a problem that when people are facing it, it's an actual issue, right? So for example, if you're building a medical technology company that can detect early signs of disease and diagnosis, for example, you're a painkiller. You're solving a problem that people need to have fixed because it's causing damage. The second type of problem, we call them the supplements, because this is where your solution would be nice to have. So the problem is not really painful, but if we had a solution or if we had a twist on it, then this would be something nice to have, right? So there's two ways of always, approaching it. But overall, the bigger the problem you're solving, the bigger your solution, the more people would be willing to pay for it. But that's why it's important for you ahead of time to know what type of direction you're taking so that you also know, okay, what's the demand? How important is this? Is this something that people actually need and want? So don't look at what you're looking for, look at what the market is looking for. And it's not going to be easy, right? Because if it was easy, then everyone else would have already done it. So you need to build something that is really hard to replicate, which means you need to get comfortable with failing at it and learning from it. And it's going to be a painful journey, but it's worth it, right? And success at anything will always come down to focus and effort. And those are usually the two things that you control. You cannot control the market. You cannot control the outcome. You can only control how focused you are and how much effort you're putting in. Another thing I can promise you is that it will take much longer than you expect. When I started the company, I thought that within the first year, we will raise somewhere between $1 to $5 million, scale to a couple of million users within 3 to 4 years, sell the company, start another one. It's usually not the way it works, especially when you're a first-time startup founder, right? So whatever number you have in your mind, multiply it by 3. So that's typically how long it will take for you to get things running. It's how long it will take for you to learn, to build your network, and to be able to actually start getting signs of success and so on. So a typical startup journey, especially for first-time founders, can be anywhere from 7 to 8 to 10 years, right? So there's no real number. It really depends on the industry you're in and how you're building. Most of the founder friends that I have from all over the world, they've all been doing it for 5 years plus, right? Especially as first-time founders. And the reason why I say this is because I want you all to have the right expectations going into it. And I want you to know that this is a marathon and it's not going to be a sprint. And burnouts are real. When I was younger, I thought the concept of a burnout was just a theory. Like I was like, that's never going to happen, right? That's never going to happen to me. But it actually sneaks up on you quite a lot if you don't pay attention to it and if you don't take care of yourself and the journey. So it's important for you to set boundaries ahead of time. So as you're building this, schedule time off in your calendar. And I keep telling Maha that I'm going to take time off, but I haven't done that in years, So don't do as I do as I say in this matter. So take some time off, exercise. I think some of the best founders that I've met are founders that take care of their health because they have clarity, right? So exercising is very important. Eating healthy, I cannot even emphasize how important eating healthy is because it allows you to have a clearer mind and sleep well, right? If you don't sleep well, you're not going to take good decisions. Okay, so those are all important things. The whole hustle mentality is not sustainable. You might be able to do it for a couple of months. You might even be able to do it for a year, but you will burn out. You will burn out your team. You will burn out your family with you. And at the end of the day, the whole point of being an entrepreneur and building a business is quality of life. You're building a business that will make people's lives better. If it destroys your life in the process, is it really worth it? Personally, I don't think it is. And I want you also to be aware because you're going to have, what I love about this program is the amount of mentorship that you're going to get, right? So we have one of the most amazing pool of mentors from all over the world, and we handpick every single mentor. We handpick them, we connect them to you individually, we give you access to them. But as part of your journey, you're going to get a lot of advice, right? And we have something called mentor fatigue, which means sometimes you're going to get so much contradictory advice that you might actually get a bit confused and tired. What you need to understand is that mentors cannot take the decision for you, right? Mentors can broaden your horizon. They can challenge your ideas. They can, make you think of things that you actually never considered. At the end of the day, your job with the mentors is to gather as much feedback as possible, to broaden your horizon as much as possible. But then at some point, you need to sit, you need to analyze all of that. And then what you want to do is you want to come up with different hypotheses, okay? Never go into something assuming that you know everything. The best way is to validate. And a huge part, the reason why we call it idea validation is because the whole point of this program is to challenge your beliefs. If you come in believing that you have the most amazing startup in the world, amazing. Now, can we validate it in the market? And that's the whole point of also the advice that you get from mentors, right? So if you think something makes sense, the best way to know is to create a very quick experiment and to go test it. So always let the market tell you if they want this or if they don't want this. Now, do you have the right market? That is something that we're going to be working on as well throughout the program, because it's very important for you to know that markets change and the behavior of different users in different countries also change. So it's important to have these experiments. And that's why data is very important. One of the big mistakes that I made in the beginning is that we didn't really have a lot of mentors early on. And when I started, we didn't have these types of programs. So I didn't understand what they meant by the importance of data. Data is important because it really allows you to gather intelligence and to see what the market is saying. So instead of the feedback being all over the place and random, you can actually track your progress. So from early on, we're really going to focus on, okay, what are the metrics that we need to pay attention to? What are the metrics that will tell us if we're moving in the right direction or if we're moving in the wrong direction? And then when you learn how to analyze this data well, it helps you with your gut feeling, because then you look at something, you're like, I thought this made sense, but the market is telling me, no, it's not. So you can run a lot of experiments and you can gather a lot of insights and learn a lot just by gathering the right data early on. And that's one of the things that we're going to be focusing on together throughout your journey. And what I want to say is that you have to pick your co-founders really carefully. So those are my co-founders in the company. The reason why I put them in this format is because as co-founders, we're more than just team members, right? Because it's like having 3 spouses in this case, because we're giving birth, right? We're giving birth to something and it's growing, right? So you're giving birth to a baby and then you're seeing it across the journey. It's a long-term plan. It comes with a lot of responsibilities. Today, I feel like I have 28 children, but the whole point of it is that you're going to become family. Sometimes you're going to see your co-founders so much more than you see your family members, right? I travel with them. Sometimes we stay in the same house. We spend holidays together. I know their fears. I know their problems. I know their marital problems, right? They share that because sometimes it's burdening them. So you're going to be very close to your co-founders. So you actually have to pick your founding team very, very carefully. Don't just pick a friend because you think you're going to enjoy working with them. Is your co-founder the right fit? We're going to talk about this so much. The best co-founders are co-founders that complement your weaknesses, right? So I was building a company that's both in technology and in fashion. I don't have a fashion background, and I understood technology from a business point of view, but I was not a technical founder. So what I had to go do in the beginning is I went out and I got Mo. So Mo is our CTO and co-founder, because he is a genius when it comes to computer science and software architecture and so on. And then I went out and I got Dana and Nadim, because Nadim understood the business side of fashion and Dana understood the creative side of fashion. And I was leading the business side. And then the 4 of us together became a team and we built this together. Now, is it forever? It can be, but just like marriages, sometimes it can end in a messy divorce. So how do you protect yourself? You protect yourself by saying that, hey, I believe that this can go, all the way, but in case it doesn't, we need the company to be safe. So that's why don't promise shares and don't sign any documents yet. Okay, we have what we call a vesting period. A vesting period, and I say this now because I've seen so many times where people join an accelerator, the next day they register the company, they distribute the shares. And that is wrong, because if I give shares to someone today and they leave the next day, if they take all their shares with them, the company is ruined, right? So with vesting period, it protects you. And the way the vesting period works is, let's say I go to, Hani, and I'm like, Hani, would you build this company with me? I'll give you 20% equity. So from the first day, he represents the 20%, but the 20%, he gets them over a period of 4 years. And the first year, we usually call it a cliff period, which means if Hani leaves or is, let go of in the first year, he does not take any of the equity. After the first year anniversary of Hani being with me, Hani receives 25% of the 20%. And then from there on end, it vests either monthly or quarterly on a pro rata. Okay, so this way it guarantees that the company is always in a safe place. Okay, and don't worry, by the way, we have templates for vesting. We have an entire session that is just about that. We have sessions about how to register the company and so on. Another thing that you need to know in entrepreneurship is that the market size is important. Sometimes we see founders that are excited about building a technology that is going to take years to build. It's very expensive, but the market size would be, let's say, potentially $1 million or $5 million if they take the whole market across the region. that is too small of an industry. So you always need to make sure that if I'm building something big, does it have a big enough market? Because a lot of people come and say, oh, if we just take 10% of the market or 1% of the market, that is typically not how this works, right? You don't really know what percentage of the market you're going to take. But if the market is big enough, it means it's worth pursuing. But if the best you can do is reach a $5 million revenue over 10 years, right? But you've already spent $10, $12 million to get there. So the return on investment will not be worth it. And typically investors would not back it. So the bigger the market size, right? And the more details you have on the market size and how you can dissect it. Like if you say 1.2 billion people in the world, for example, suffer from, I'm just going to throw random things. 1.2 billion people in the world have eczema. Out of them, 17 million people live in the US. But you know what? 6 million of them fall within the category that I'm targeting. So 6 million people, that is your target size. Okay, so that's how you want to be able to dissect it. And monetization is very important, which means we got that your technology is amazing, but how do you make money? Okay, and it's very important from early on for you guys to start thinking of all of the different potential monetization way, right? A lot of people come and say, oh, we'll build it and then we'll figure it out. That might be too late, right? It might be too late and you might be missing out on a lot and you might not build the technology the right way. When you think about monetization early on, it means that part of what you're going to be validating in the program is, can I go and sell this to someone? If someone is willing to pay for it, then this is an actual problem. And that's how you can know how big of a problem it is. Can I sell this to you for $10 a month? Then the problem is worth $10 a month. If someone's willing to pay $100, great. Now it's a bigger problem. Now, if someone's willing to pay $1,000, it's even bigger. But the only way you're going to find out is actually by validating and testing it in the market. And the team is very important. The team is going to be either, helping you build, or it will be the reason why it doesn't. Early on, it's important for you to think a bit about, what is the culture that you want to have? What are the values? Now, culture and values are very important, and they actually come from you as founders, which means you have the opportunity today to build the company of your dreams. How would you want to do it? What are the things in the workspace, for example? How were you treated in your company that you didn't like? What is the vow that you took that if you were to do this, you could do it better? So this is your actual opportunity. This is the opportunity for you to build an environment that you always wished you had as an employee or as a team member. Right? If you don't do it for your own company, you're not going to do it anywhere else. So it's very important for you to think about it. And from the first day to have those written and to communicate it with the team. When I started Lemonade, we didn't have money to pay for employees. People literally joined us. We had 7 people working for free in the beginning because they liked the culture, they loved the values. And the reason why they loved it, because we always had the spirit of co-creation. So everyone felt like we're building this company together. We had a safe space, we would brainstorm ideas. And even till this day, majority, and I promise you, majority of the features that we have and majority of the success that we have are not ideas that came from me or from my co-founders. They're all ideas and suggestions that we got from the team. So the team would come to us and be like, hey, we were brainstorming and we think we should do this. And then they would run their own experiments, validate it, bring us back the results, and then we would implement it. So your team will actually push you so much further. And at the end of the day, people don't stay in companies just for the compensation. People stay in the company because they're valued, because of their other team members, because of the recognition that they're getting. So it's important to always celebrate the success stories. And with startups, what we have is an employee stock option. And this is very common, especially in the US, where we set aside 10% of the equity of the company early on so that we can give it to our team members, so that everyone has a bit of skin in the game and everyone has a sense of, ownership, and we're all building it together. All right. So we're talking about these things now because I want you to have the right mindset going in. So being a tech entrepreneur is really about, sharing what you're doing. It's really about building it with the community and building it with the right people. A big part of what you're going to have to face are legal and taxes. Please do it right. Okay, sometimes it might cost you a bit more to do it right in the first place, but don't just go to the lawyer that's your cousin's son or the accountant that is your ex-wife's second cousin's boyfriend's mistress. Okay, you want to make sure that you're working with the right people, because it will cost you, some mistakes will cost you so much more to fix later on. So you want to make sure that you're setting things up in the right way from the beginning, because changing them will cost you more than setting up the right way. Now, luckily, we are surrounded by amazing lawyers and consultants and accountants that will actually guide you and navigate you, and we will work with you on a case-by-case basis to see what is the best jurisdiction to register in, who are the best people to serve you, and so on. Right? So if you haven't registered anything, my advice is don't register it yet. Right? Go through the program. Let us help you do it the right way. Right? Some of the lessons that I learned along my journey is, first of all, it's really, building a startup is really about your network, right? And what I love about the concept of network is it's not your connections. Network is the connections of the connections of your connections. So if I know, let's say, 10 very influential people, and these 10 people each know 10 other people, and they each know 10 other people, suddenly my network is big. So the whole game is, how do I get in front of my 10 people as fast as possible, get them to introduce me to their friends? How do I maintain and build a relationship with them so they become my friends? So now my network went from 10 to a lot more. And then how do I connect with those? Most of the people that I work with today are 3 generations down from me. So they're 3 generations of introductions. And those are my investors, those are my partners, those are my my network. I reached AUB, I think, through a 3rd or 4th degree of separation as well. It was an introduction to an introduction to an introduction to an introduction, right? So build your network. Second lesson that I learned is sometimes a bad employee will cause so much more damage to your team than you can imagine. So if someone is not a cultural fit, if someone is creating more damage in the team, if someone is making everyone depressed and sucking the energy out of them, you need to let go of them as fast as possible. Third is the power of mentors, right? It's amazing how much the right mentors can actually support you and take you to the right places. What I would say is that build a relationship with those mentors that goes far beyond the program. Okay, so the mentors that I met years ago are my friends now, because they're people that I stayed in touch with. I keep communicating with them. I keep sending them updates. Anytime we're in the same country, I, ask them out for lunch or dinner or coffee or so on. If you want to launch something, launch it fast, right? There was this quote that says, if you launch something and you're not, what was it? If you're not ashamed of it, you launch too late. So the whole point of that is launch as fast as possible so that you can start gathering feedback as fast as possible, and then you can progressively build on top of it. You're going to fail anyways, so fail fast, but it's not real failure until you give up. So every failure is a lesson that you learn, and it's a micro pivot. Pivot means you were going in one direction, something happened, you got new insight, you got new data, you pivoted. You reach here. New insight, new data, pivot, pivot, pivot. The best companies have always been companies that pivoted. The funny thing is that YouTube actually started off as a dating platform. So they were actually building the world's first dating platform where you would upload a video of yourself talking about yourself. And if people liked it, they would send you a message. Right? That was YouTube. What ended up happening is that some people wanted to show off their skills. So they would go on YouTube and they would create content of them playing the guitar and then performing and so on. And suddenly people started enjoying that. And people started actually watching this content, not to date them, but because it was cool, entertaining peer-to-peer content. And then YouTube had an aha moment. There's a lack in the world of a platform where people like us can show off our talent. And that's how YouTube became what it became, and then got acquired by Google later on. right? Nintendo was a playing card company, right? Netflix used to send out, Netflix was fun because you would rent a CD online. So Netflix originally started off as a tech-enabled SME, but then along the way, they pivoted and they became one of the largest platforms in the world. Okay, and don't take rejections personal. Now, one thing we're going to focus on a lot in this program is pitching. Okay, pitching means how do you tell your story? How do you tell the story of your startup? How do you go on stage and present it in front of investors and partners and so on? The best founders are founders that learn how to pitch. And what I can tell you is that no founder starts off as a good pitcher. They're all horrible, with no exception. And I'm sure the first time you're going to pitch is going to be horrible as well. But the thing is, they all learned and they all became great. And a lot of our startups have won global awards and have won global competitions, right? So we're going to focus a lot on storytelling because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good your company is. If people don't hear about it, if you cannot share that story, no one's going to know, right? One of my friends who's very good at marketing told me something very early on, which was funny for me. He's like, marketing and pitching is like being in a room, okay, with the most attractive person for you. Okay, so imagine you're in a room and the most attractive person in the world is in that room with you. Okay, that's your startup. Now, marketing is the light, pitching is the light, which means without the pitch, imagine you have the most attractive person in the room, but it's pitch dark and you cannot see them. So what's the point? It doesn't matter, right? When you start to learn how to pitch, you become that most attractive solution. And someone in the room is going to be like, that is the most attractive solution for the problem that I'm facing. All right. The number one question that I always keep getting asked is, how do I get investors? And I'm sure a lot of you are also thinking about the same thing. I want to start this company. How do I get investors? First of all, what you need to know is that investors, especially in early stages, they invest in you. They invest in the founders. They invest in the potential that you have as founders, right? So they invest in the people. Because what they want to know is, if I invest in you, are you the right person to solve this? When things go wrong, and they will go wrong, are you there to figure it out? So always remember the famous quote that Mike Tyson had. And remember it because that's going to be your startup journey. Mike Tyson used to say, everyone has a plan before they get punched in the face. The market is going to punch you in the face. And that's what investors want to see. They want to see, when you get punched in the face, are you going to be able to stand up? Are you going to be able to fight back? Are you going to be able to change your strategy and adapt to the situation that you're in? So they're going to invest in you, right? And that's why we talked about early on, it's you have to build up that resilience and you have to build up the clues that other founders have left, the successful founders have left, right? So it's a journey of personal growth. Second, you need to build relationships with the investors. Okay, what I've noticed is that we have this saying in the UAE, it takes 9 to 10 coffees with an investor before closing a round with them, because you really need to build relationship and you need to build trust. Once you have that relationship, it becomes so much easier. You need to research the investors quite well, because not all investors invest in all the same fields. And you want to make sure, are you a good fit? Who's your ideal investor? And do they have money? Because a lot of times they would not have money at the moment because they're also raising their own funds. And all this information is publicly available. And those are things that we're going to help you navigate as well. When you go to an investor and you ask for advice, you usually get money. And if you go to an investor and you ask for money, they usually give you advice, which means the best way to approach an investor is, hey, this is what I'm building, and I would love for you to take a look at it and tell me if I'm doing it right. Is there someone that you can connect me with, or so on? That's usually how we've done things in the company as well, and that's end up being quite successful. We've raised a lot of funds from people we didn't even know they were investors sometimes. Like, I would meet someone who's very experienced in what they do, very successful. I would meet with them. I'm like, hey, this is what I'm building. Those are some of the challenges that we have. Do you know anyone that can actually help us solve it? And then as we continue our conversation and so on, along the way, they would ask me, by the way, are you guys fundraising? And then I would be like, yes. And that's how the conversation starts. And we've actually have a lot of them, invest in us, send regular updates. I love that a lot of our AUB startups actually do that. We raised, and I'm not even joking, we raised $500,000 when we started after 9 months by just sending monthly regular updates. So every time I would meet an investor, or every time I would meet someone who is very experienced and a high net worth individual, I would add them to my CRM I used to call them stakeholders. And every month I would just send them an update, right? Be like, hey, X, this is what we did this month. Those were the success stories. Those are the challenges. And if you know anyone that works in this field, can you please introduce us? And I kept on sending them every single month. After 9 months, a couple of them met up together and they were discussing our company. And then they reached out to us like, hey, we love the updates. We want to support. And then they created a group and they invested together in the company, right? So send the regular updates, and we're going to show you templates as well as part of the program. How startup funding works. So again, it's something we're going to cover deeply, but just for you guys to have an idea on understanding, typically it starts from small rounds of $100,000 in the beginning, where it's mostly friends and family or accelerator money. And then typically what we try to help you with in the program is to reach your pre-seed to seed investments. So a lot of our companies have actually now raised their pre-seed. Pre-seeds are typically in the region at around $600,000, and then the journey continues. But again, it's a long-term journey, and along the way, you're going to be giving out, equity. And that's something that we're going to guide you through as well. It's not relevant. The second most asked question that I get is, how do we create a work-life balance? Honestly, I don't think this is a question anyone has really been able to answer properly. It will come with some sacrifices. It means you need to be willing to sacrifice a part of your lifestyle, especially in the next 2 to 3 years. You're going to be working harder. You might be working for a lot less money as well in the beginning. But with time, it actually becomes worth it and it becomes better the more the team grows. But you're not really going to, I don't think the whole concept of work-life balance exists, because at the end of the day, you only have life, and then you decide where to allocate that time. But you need to have your non-negotiables. So for me, I have non-negotiables. My non-negotiables are, I want to be able to meditate every day, and I want to be able to go to the gym for at least an hour, around 5 days a week. I want to be able to eat healthy at least 5 days in a week. For me, those are the most important non-negotiables. And I also try to get at least 6 hours of sleep a night. So those are the things that are non-negotiable. Now, I don't have a family, so it's a bit easier. When you have a family, and again, I think Dr. Asfour and Maha can attest to this a bit more, since they have families, but you also need to be able to put the family time in it, and you need to be honest with them ahead of time. You need to tell them, listen, I'm building this for all of us, and I might not be as accessible, as I used to be, but I will do my best to be there, right? And then you set rules. Like if you have a spouse, you have a significant other, set a fixed date night. And that's what the co-founder of Netflix does, actually. So every Tuesday, he leaves the office, no matter what, at 5 p.m. And everyone knows, because every Tuesday is his date night with his wife. And he's been doing that for 12 years. So it's sometimes small habits, but you just put them as part of a system, right? And then you follow through. So instead of leaving it out to the randomness of life, figure out ahead of time, right? Before the journey becomes too chaotic, because it will suck you in, I promise you that. Figure out what are your non-negotiables. What are the things that make you who you are? Okay, what are the elements of your identity that turn you into the best version of who you are? Because at the end of the day, people are going to join that version of you, right? Write them down and then set clear systems for it in your schedule. When people open my schedule, because my schedule is shared with my team, They will see, for example, gym time. They will see meditation time. If I have a dinner or so on for my personal life, they will see it blocked out as personal time. And the reason why I do that is because if I don't, I will forget, I will take it for granted, and then my schedule will take over. So whatever is important for you, you plan for it ahead of time, you add it to your calendar. So this is your opportunity now. If you want to ask any questions, Maha's here, Dr. Asur is here as well. So if you want to ask anything, please feel free to do so.
So may I ask a question?
Yes, but I think Bahia had her hand up before you.
Yeah.
So we're
It's
gonna
okay.
start with
It's okay.
her.
Go ahead, Ahmad. I'll go after you. No worries.
Okay, I have a question. How much financially stable you should be before embarking on a startup journey? Like you mentioned that the first 2 years will be very challenging. So from where one يعني لازم يكون عم يشتغل شغلتين مع بعض before completely moving into the startup or not?
Honestly, it really depends on the situation that you're currently in. If you're someone who has very little responsibility and your lifestyle, is not that extravagant and you're willing to, sacrifice a part of it for the next couple of years and you already have some savings, like if you cut down your expenses a lot, if you have savings for the next year or 2 years, then it might be a good idea to go full time on it. But in the beginning, you typically don't really need to go full time, right? So especially in the early days, up until and even in the program, like the reason why we do our calls this late, especially for the IVP and so on, is because at this phase we know that you're not fully 100% committed yet. You're not doing this as your full-time job, right? So the more you advance in the company, when you start getting investments and so on. Now, when you get investment, you are required to go full-time because that's typically what investors want. But I would also say if you don't have a nest egg, right, of at least a year to 2 years to sustain yourself, I wouldn't go full-time because that's also going to add way too much pressure on your company because then you're going to be taking decisions out of desperation. And that is the last thing that we want, right? We don't want you to rush into something just because you feel like you're running out of time. That makes sense, especially in the early days. That's why it's always depends on the situation you're in, right? But typically, you want to have a certain amount of runway before you go full time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur, for the presentation. It was very comprehensive, and it's Bahio, just to clarify the pronunciation. I have 3 quick questions. One which you already answered in relation to blocking the time, and I wanted to ask you, like, what would be your advice for someone who works full time that also wants to dedicate time for their business? And I think, and I like what you said in terms of blocking time, having the non-negotiables. I would assume that this would also apply for someone who works full time because we're bound to get this immense work done, as you said.
Yeah, it's especially if you're working full time. So a lot of businesses start after 5 p.m., by the way. Like a lot of business creation. By the way, do you know that Starbucks was one of the first places where businesses were built? That was the whole point. It was the place to go after work, right? It's where minds would connect and meet after work. I started my company in coffee shops in the beginning. That's the first year was all meetings in coffee shops. All of our meetings would be done after 5 or 6 p.m. But see, we set the rules. So even with my early team members, I set the rules. I'm like, we should be having conversations, fixed conversations at least 3 times a week. And we would set them as fixed meetings. And then for the rest of the time, we would have clear deliverables outside of those meetings, what each person would be working on. So we tried to set a schedule for ourselves ahead of time. Another thing that I noticed is that weekends are important, right? So every time, like sometimes I support my friends with their startups and so on. So we work on them usually during the weekend a lot, right? So we would block out, let's say 3 to 4 hours on a Sunday or a Saturday morning or so on, and we work on it. We try to keep it fun, right? Like we meet over coffee or pizza or whatever it is, but we always set them out. And one thing that helped me a lot is I took a big part of my non-negotiables and I put them early in the morning. So for me, my meditation, my workouts were important, right? So I go to the gym typically at 7 or 6 in the morning because I want to get it out of the way, right? Before my schedule goes a bit insane. So along the way, you will start noticing what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
I have two more questions, but feel free not to answer them if we'll dive deeper into them at later stages, but I'm gonna just say them. For the co-founder part, I'm naming my resistance. My resistance is that I wouldn't trust anyone. So I'm looking forward to hear your advice on that and at what stage would it be necessary to have a co-founder. Secondly, a question popped into my head when we were talking about potential investors, is what if a potential investor was a competitor? So that was something as well. Feel free not to answer them now if we'll delve later.
I mean, they're very
Fine.
interesting questions, and I'll give you some quick answers. But for the first one about trusting your co-founders or so on, if we look at trust overall, you need to decide how you want to proceed, because if you want to build it on your own, you can. It's just that you would be going fast, but you won't go long. The whole point of building it with other people, it might be a bit slower in the beginning because you're working together as a group, but that's how you really grow. Today, for example, I would not be able to do all the things that I do if I was on my own. The fact that I have co-founders means that I have other people, representing the best and the full interest of the company in my absence. But together, we're 3 people or 4 people, right? So what happens is that you have 4 times that power going in. The right co-founders will really take you to the right places. And listen, not everyone is the right co-founder. I had to fire a co-founder at some point. It's very painful, but that's why when you have the right mechanism in place, right, from the vesting period, the cliffs, and so on, you're giving yourself and your company time to figure out if this is a good match, right? It's like marriage. You don't get into it with the intention to divorce, but the reality of the thing is that some couples do, but the intention is never to divorce, right? But it can happen. But does it mean we should not get married? No, right? Is it worth it? Is it worth the risk? Yes, if you protect yourself, if you have the right mechanisms in place. But the best companies on the planet have been built with co-founders, right? And you might not know your co-founders yet. You might meet them along the way. You might meet them in your journey. And that's the funny thing. When you start this journey and you put out your intention, the funny thing is that along the way, you're going to start noticing the right people. It's a lot like when you want to buy a car. Like when you go in and you say, oh, I want to buy, I don't know, a Toyota. What's Maha's favorite car? I know it's a Toyota, the Land Cruiser, right? If you want to go and you want to buy a Toyota Land Cruiser, suddenly everywhere you look, you see a Toyota Land Cruiser, because suddenly that's what you're focused on and that's the right fit in your brain. The same happens with people. Like when you say, you know what, I want to build this, who do I need? Once your intention is clear, it's like, oh, I need an amazing, CTO. I need an amazing this or that. What happens is that you start noticing them in your circle. You start noticing them in conversations. When you meet with people who you think might know someone, you ask them. So you don't need to know all the right people today. You need to just be clear on who you need and what's that profile. But that's why the values are very important for you, because your values are part of your non-negotiables. And then it doesn't matter how amazingly skilled that person is. If they're not a value fit or a culture fit, it's not going to work. Okay. And when it comes to investors and your competition, it depends. Like, what are we talking about? Are we saying you have an idea and the investor owns this company or has invested in a similar company?
If I have an idea and this individual who could be an investor and could not be an investor is in the same field, like in the same product.
Exactly the same one?
Yes.
So why would you have the meeting with them to begin with? What's the intention behind the meeting?
Because they're the number one in their field.
Okay. I think I'm going to need a lot more details on what your company does
Okay.
and the differentiation between it. But what I can tell you is that you would always be surprised by where investments come from. And you would also be surprised by how hard it is to steal someone's idea, or they don't really have the interest to steal your idea to begin with. Like we were building a technology that's a lot like TikTok and Instagram. The first thing that I did is I called all the people that I knew that worked at these companies. That was the first thing that I did. And the reason why we do that is because, the reason why companies acquire is because they already have so many systems and so much built that it will cost them so much more to build what you're doing than to acquire what you're doing. So it's not always the wrong idea. It's not always the right idea. It's really dependent on a case by case basis, right? So, and that's how exits and acquisitions happen. And the funny thing, when we were at Web Summit, one of our startups, I love these guys because they're very smart and they're very creative. But what they did is they looked at all of the companies that were their competition in the event, and they went to them and they told them, hey, we're a big fan of yours. We want to see what would it require for us to build for you to buy us. And they don't really want to sell. All they wanted to know is they wanted to go and see, what's interesting for them. What are the big companies missing? So they went to their competitors and indirectly asked them, what are the challenges that you're facing so that they can build it? So you learn so much from your competition. Cecily, you have a question?
Yes, hi. I was just wondering if I was mostly curious to how is the mentor assigned in this like mentorship process? I was just wondering like what are the sort of criteria? What are you looking at? Are we randomly assigned, or do you maybe have a process in regards to how you do it?
Yeah, so the mentorship criteria and the way we match you varies from one phase to another. So in the idea stage program, which is the one that you're in at the moment, so this is really a self-taught pace because a lot of the resources we give you are also online, but you also have access to a lot of sessions like the one we're doing now. And there's a pool of mentor that already exists that you can actually go in and then request to schedule a meeting or schedule a call with them. And Hani has more details and he can correct me if I'm wrong. But in the first phase, it's usually we look at the initiative that you guys are usually taking, right? And the more initiative you're taking, the more you're committing, the more you're doing the deliverables and so on, the more we start noticing and we start working with you. And then when we're working in the final stages of the first phase, which is for the pitch and so on, we also start working a lot more together. So the first phase is a lot more, okay, this is the list. Those are the people I want access to. This is the reason. And then Hani and the team and so on will do everything that they can to connect you. Now, when you're doing the deliverables and so on, if we see that, oh, you know what, we have a mentor that we think is a good match, we will connect you. But starting phase 2, which is the go-to-market and then so the build and accelerate, and then phase 3, go to market. That's where we hyper focus on each team. So in the beginning of the program, we do what we call a needs assessment, where we sit together and we ask you a bunch of questions, and then we try to see what are the needs and what are the areas that you need mentorship and support in. And then we start connecting you directly with the right mentors for your startup, but you also always have the option to request additional mentors and additional people, right? So that doesn't stop. And in stage 3, we also do the same. But the exciting part about stage 3 is that we don't just do it locally, we do it globally. And when I say globally, I'm not saying, oh, we connect you to a mentor that's outside. No, we actually send you to programs all over the world. Our startups right now are spread out. We have startups that are in programs in the US and in San Francisco, in Canada. We just came back from Qatar from Web Summit. We have a lot of startups now in Cyprus, including Hani, for the go-to-market program, right? So we always make sure that we give our team as much access to resources and expertise and opportunities and markets as possible. And the first phase is all about filtering out who's serious, who's not serious, who's committed, who's not. We don't expect you to have any of the answers ready at this moment, right? The whole point is to build it out as we go. I give very long answers to very simple questions. So ask carefully. Kamal, you have a question?
Hello, thank you for your presentation. It was informative. Now I have few questions. First, we have an idea and we are at a low-fi prototype stage. So, what do we need to have to proceed to the next steps? And what are the criteria to proceed, if there are any criteria?
Yeah, listen, we're gonna walk you through everything throughout the program, but the most important thing at the end is the validation, right? Because a lot of people have ideas, a lot of people have prototypes. So it's like, how do we validate this in the market? How do we gather that data? How do we create the proper hypothesis and then make sure that it's, there's something backing it. And then from there, you can progress to stage 2, right? But typically the whole point of the first phase is to find hints and early signs that what you're building has an actual market and a need, and it's actually solving, a problem. But again, the details of what you're doing, we can explore that, in person. What I can tell you, however, is that even if you have a prototype, even if you've done some of the work already, I would strongly advise you to go through the whole thing, even if you've done it before.
Yeah, sure.
Because every time you do something, you learn something new, but the whole point is who can you connect with along the way. So
Yeah.
I think you actually gain quite a lot from it. And if you have anything already prepared and so on, I think if you share it with Hani and the team, we can actually start giving you, feedback, start, looking at your case and then start tailoring things.
Yeah, okay. Yes. And lastly, will we have to pay anything to enroll in the course?
Hani, is this recorded or can I make jokes?
This is recorded, so use caution when you speak.
So no jokes?
Oh,
No jokes. Okay.
no. I mean, you can joke, but like not one of your jokes, you know?
I was gonna say,
No Arthur jokes.
all right. So no EIR jokes. Okay. So I was gonna say that not directly, but we can discuss indirect payments. But again, it's a joke for all the AUB people listening. No, so it's actually a free program. The only condition that we have, and Maha might have to jump in to correct me on this one. The only condition is that one of the founders or one of the senior
Core team member.
core team members just has to come from the AUB environment. Yani whether student, alumni, faculty, professor, and directly the relative of someone that used to be at AUB.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anytime. Hani, are we good on time?
Yeah, we can continue. We can continue if there are more questions. If you're available, yeah.
Sure, I think we can take one more question, and then I think you wanted to give closing remarks, right? Yes, Nazi.
Hello, أول شيء thank you على the presentation. I have a question. You said إنه في two types, startup tech driven, tech enabled. Can a startup be both? إنه مش both، إنه معتمدة على في part من التech enabled بس هي أكثر tech driven، بس إنه عم تستعمل both.
Like there's no clear, clean cut, rule. يعني ولا مرة you're gonna sit in a room and someone's gonna look at you and be like, you're tech enabled or, you're not. This is more what we say, what we use when we're talking to each other so that we always inspire you to think about what is it that you're actually trying to build, right? Because a lot of time, what we always see is that people come and they think they're building a startup, but it's actually an SME, right? And they're just using a website to sell a product that already exists. So we just use these words for you to be able to visualize the difference, right? And the reason why I like to compare it to Toters and McDonald's and so on, it's because it really creates that illusion in your head. It's like, oh, okay, this is tech enabled. This is what a startup actually is, right? But it's just at the end of the day, the whole point of it is, am I building something that, first of all, is solving a problem? So is there a problem in the world? Okay. Do I have the solution to this problem? Is the problem big enough? Is anyone trying to solve this problem? And if so, what makes me different? And do I have the right team to be able to make it happen? And how am I making money? And can I make enough money? Right. So those are typically the 7 things that we look at. So if you're able to answer these 7 questions properly, then most probably you have a startup, because now it means you're building something new or something that is completely different than the competition. Right. However, if you're not able to answer these questions, then most probably what you're doing is that it's something that already exists. You're just trying to sell it in a slightly different way. Okay. And in that case, that would most probably fall more under tech enabled. But again, there's no clear, cut by it. It really depends on how the whole startup is. And sometimes innovation, by the way, might include the product. So yeah, does that answer your question, Azim?
thank you كثير. فهمت الكونسبت عم تحكي منه.
All right, perfect.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we're going to take last question from Adam, and then Hani, you can do the closing.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for your time, OLC, and for the whole presentation. Just a quick question building on the previous one. So let's say the startup is a tech startup. Can the MVP not include tech at all? And the idea doesn't need tech for an MVP. Is that fine?
Yeah, actually, it's very common, and actually it's a very smart way to do it.
Okay.
Okay, we might not call it an MVP, but we can call it validation for a problem solution fit. But that doesn't mean that it replaces the MVP need. Do you see what I mean? It just means that you were able to validate the problem and solution, but now part of your journey is to validate multiple things. The first thing, you're validating problem solution. The second thing is you're validating if you built the right solution, right? Because you also need to validate, is my application user-friendly or my technology user-friendly, right? Can people understand it? How are people using it? Are people behaving it? So even though we understand problem solution, you still need to validate the product itself. So there's different versions of validation. So while we might not call this the MVP, but it's still something you can launch.
All right, deal. And I'm just asking, first of all, for the sake of like the entire IVP, the program, also as well, just to get like an idea, do you recommend launching without the tech or not? And is that the tech is not that big of a necessity to launch? Is it fine to launch ahead of the tech and then incorporate that later, just to get things rolling?
I would say it really depends on what you're trying to build. It's really case by case, but I have seen that work amazingly. And a lot of people actually, if you can test something without having to build something, it's always a good idea. Right? So a lot of time you have to hack it in the beginnings, and that's always great because you validate that there's a problem and that people are looking for a solution. Usually in the IVP, you're not really required to build the technology yet. In the IVP, what's most interesting for all of us is, hey, I believe there's this huge problem. This is why. Those are all the numbers of the market that prove it, right? But you know what? We went out and we did our work. We validated people are willing to pay for it. And then this is what we have in mind. It's always great to have, you need to have, I think, the lo-fi prototype, which is the no code, no product, just have at least the visuals, have the UX UI somehow built, the wireframes, because part of the validation is you're going to have to show this wireframe to potential people, right? And then have them walk through it, try to click on it, even if it's on paper or on Figma. But you're not required to have the tech built yet. That's more a phase 2. If you have it, great. But if you don't have it, that's fine, because the whole point in the first one is problem, solution, demand.
All right, very clear. Thank you so much for the details.
Perfect. And we're going to work with you guys on all of this. So it's going to get clearer as we go.
Thanks.
Today I try to jam pack your entire journey in an hour, but then each one of these topics is a week worth of material that we're going to work on together.
Great. Thanks a lot.
So I'm just going to end the call with a couple of things I want to discuss. So 3 things I want to mention. أول شيء write everything down. Like every time you talk to an advisor and you agree on something, just write it down in an email. Hey, keeping track of what we were talking about. This is what was discussed. But you have to do this because every single year so far with me at iPark has had a co-founder problem. And the last cohort co-founder problem, a lot of the problem in it was that there was no trace of what was agreed on paper. So it became like my word against yours. So be sure to document every decision you're making, which is a critical strategic thing, especially if there's strategic things. If you've got strategic stuff that is very sensitive, then have it in email, have the other party say yes. You hear this a lot, like have everything on paper, sign a contract, all of that, but you really need to. It's not a joke. Every year we've had a startup co-founder issue. Only one or two, not like every single team is going to have issues, but it's important to document everything that you're doing strategically. That's one. Two, you need to be tech savvy. So before you go paying somebody to try to create some sort of low fidelity prototype, you should be able to sit down and break your head with the software and create some sort of vague, this is what I envision, because this is going to save you time and money. If you just go explain something to somebody, they're going to understand half the picture, even if you explain it well, they're going to do it as far as they understood. When you show it, it's better than telling them about it. So you need to be able to create these low fidelity things with Figma or whatever, a website or a basic app with no database. That's two. And number three, you need to be really good at getting proper feedback. And what I mean by this is a lot of the times people are going to not want to hurt your feelings. They're going to just encourage you and they're going to tell you it's great and whatever. You need to become really, really, really good at understanding exactly how another person feels about what you're offering them. That's how you get the feedback. And as what Arthur said during the presentation, a lot of the time you learn from the feedback of the customers that you work with. But if you're not asking the right way, this is the mom test. If you're not asking the right way, you would sometimes get feedback that's not accurate. So you need to put your ego aside. Don't think that you have something gold. Think you have something great and you just want to improve it. And then you go to the market and you get the truthful feedback. It could be yes or no. It could be in between. And that's where you get insight about exactly what you're trying to solve and how you can improve what you're trying to create. So those are the three things from me, Arthur.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Hani. Personally, I was not that tech savvy, but again, I was really good at getting people to join me. So the first thing that I did, I got a CTO. And a CTO is a bit different because then that person's your partner, right? So it was my co-founder and CTO. So it was as if we shared the brain and the mind, but then he's the one that had to go and tell everyone else what to build, so yeah.
Guys, are we closing? Can I
Yes,
ask something or you? So
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to ask the attendees to just give us a thumb up if you are motivated and think you are going to commit to your journey and have your startup ready in a year. Bahia, Ishil, Hani, Damis, Cecily, Mansour, Tarek, Reem, Kayan, Jana, Yara. Great. Maria, Ghassan. Ghassan dropped off. Okay. Okay, guys. So we can't wait to Rami. We can't wait to see this happening together. Our team is fully available and ready and excited to help you. And along with many, many other friends that you will find in iPark, by the way, we have mentors and other founders always available in iPark and ready to jump for help at any time. So hope to see you soon. Reach out.
you, Maha. Okay, thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Arthur, for the presentation. Thanks to the audience who came by. Thank you, Dr. Asfour. And we will be in touch